Oh my goodness. I'm so thrilled to introduce our audience today to dietitian, integrative, and functional nutrition certified practitioner, Meg Green. She has her own private practice and she guides ambitious women to balance hormones, support thyroid functions, revive metabolism, manage stress, and understand food choice balance to optimize health. And in a completely personalized way, so important, by using functional nutrition analysis and time honored traditions, which we will unpack all of that. Welcome, Meg.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to
Oh,
be here.
yeah, it is so great to see you. It's funny because I had taken this magazine home with me from the pediatrician's office in Arkansas, and I have since moved back to Ohio. And there was something in it, and you popped off the page for me. And then I read all of that with the hormones and the thyroid and the stress management. I'm like, wait, we need her. Come join us. So it was just funny,
No,
but here we are.
no. Women need as much support as they can get, especially in times of shifts with hormones and things like that. We weren't talked to about those types of things. And sometimes it's even taboo to bring it up, or we had those feelings of taboo to bring it up. So I love that women are now empowered and on the forefront and can verbalize, hey, something's not right.
I 100% agree. And I think this is fun and interesting about you because we're both dietitians. And I don't know about you, but with all of my dietetic, for anybody who's never been through what I've been through, you go through all of these different rotations. And so it could be like a renal floor, a cardiac floor, children's. I never was introduced to integrative type care. Did you actually have a rotation with
No,
functional
so it kind of
nutrition?
happened. Yeah, it happened a little bit later in my career. In fact, whenever I finished with my dietetic internship and my graduate assistantship and things like that, I really just wanted to work within pediatrics. That was my love. And so I worked at St. Jude for a few years and then moved to Arkansas at Arkansas Children's and worked there for 12 years. And once my husband and I decided to have kiddos of my own, I really wanted to put more focus for kids for mine. So I shifted gears and started to work with adults. And so it was more like farm to table and wellness and just really kind of getting to the nitty gritty and basics of food and how it works in the body. And I myself started to crumble. I felt like I would have random aches and pains and joints not working the way that they were supposed to, hair falling out, my nails weren't growing. I was gaining weight when I've just always kind of done my normal things and not sleeping well, just all of these things that just weren't adding up and weren't as I say, my normal. And so I'd go to doctors and it's just like, you just had a baby not too long ago. It's hormone shifts or welcome to aging. And I felt this isn't living, like I feel trapped within my own body. And am I the only woman that feels this way? So I started to look into like utilizing more functional and integrative approaches and talk to some professionals that were doing that as well. And so I just took a deep dive in and then went for a certification that no one in Arkansas had. And so now I'm the only one in Arkansas that does this. And lo and behold, I'm not the only woman that feels this way. Once I started like treating myself as patient number one, everyone was like, what are you doing? How are you doing this? What's going on? We need these tips and tricks. And that's how it just organically grew to do a private practice because so many women need that support.
I love that story. And I'm telling you right now, this is the constant conversation I am having. I feel like it could be thyroid, or they don't even know to ask the thyroid questions yet, or stress is a big one that always pops up. I think you were starting to say just that weird weight gain where you're like, I'm not doing anything different. My
Yes.
exercise, if anything, is increased. So if you're good to go to like settle in today, can we pick apart each one of these topics and kind of hear your common client or like where you would start to navigate their thoughts so they can be a little more wise the next time they're sitting across from their physician in the office?
Absolutely. I want women to feel empowered and to know that it is okay if their provider almost kind of shuts them down or they don't feel like they're getting heard or listened to probe and to feel it's all right to go and find a provider that will listen to, because there's lots of fish out in the sea and you deserve to have the right labs looked at, the right things to talk about and the right amount of time to do that. So we can dive into each and every one.
Okay, I'm going to love this. And because you had said this on your website, how you might be approaching your health and like that whole idea of going into the doctor's visit and them throwing a prescription across the table of something that you just told them. Give us like an example of what that looks like. Because I've heard that a lot too, where like an anti-anxiety or antidepressant gets thrown at them where it's really something different that's hormonally based that could be addressed.
Yes, well, I work with women specifically. And so especially once we hit that 40-year-old mark, a lot of things start to change, and naturally so. Levels are dropping. Things are not working the way that they're supposed to, is what I always hear women say. And so they'll go to their doctor. I'm not sleeping well. I feel a little bit more stressed, or sometimes I can feel down and out and I don't know what's going on. My periods are not the way that they're supposed to be, or not how they used to be. So we'll have 45-year-old women get prescribed on birth control to control periods. Well, that's not what birth control is designed to do. And not only that, birth control will lower our hormonal levels, and it also lowers our testosterone, which starts to lower at age 30. That is our focus and our memory for women, and metabolism. And so we are, causing problems that, and then they'll get prescribed on an antidepressant when guess what? They might just need some estrogen support, And so I hear that a lot, that they don't feel heard, that they're not getting the proper time or talk to about some of the medications that they start. And if you start an antidepressant, guess what? That can affect your testosterone levels as well. And so a lot of these meds, and there are times and places where these things are absolutely needed. I 100% agree with that. But sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're given as Band-Aids, and we just need to do a little bit more digging and do some testing and get down to what's going on with the patient in more than just a 15-minute time frame to really see if that's actually what's needed.
Yeah, I love that you're mentioning the time frame, because that is the typical time that's given. I feel like my mom has even come in with a list of questions and been told, you need to pause on that and come back for a different visit. Like that's real. The time frame's real. I will say, to rewind from what you're saying right now, I can see people's panic buttons being pushed a little bit, because when we start to hear, maybe it's not this, maybe it is estrogen, or maybe it's not this, and it's that all of a sudden the overwhelm starts to come in and go, well, how the heck am I supposed to understand all this? Like my practitioners don't even understand it. And this is where I love that we have you today. So kind of walk us through this calming path of how this could actually feel, or great first steps.
Yes. First, if you feel like you aren't being listened to or heard, women have we have that gut instinct that knows that something is not right with our bodies. No one knows us better than us. And so we just have to continue to voice and advocate. And once we do feel heard and we find a provider that listens to us, they're going to do some digging. And that's when most of the time they'll draw some labs. I love drawing labs on women because I do very personalized plans for each woman that I work with. And we need to know where their levels are. It might not be that something is too low or too high, but we need to know where that is, just a baseline. And so we're learning everything about you. And when we see what levels are going on and how they are, they actually feel validated. It's not in their head. And there's proof in their hands that something's going on. And the reason why you are waking up at 3:00 in the morning every single night, or the reason why you are craving sugar so much in the afternoon, it's not because you just have a problem and can't control the sweets. No, we have cortisol drop happening. Our blood sugars are dropping at that time. There's things that are going on. Our caffeine is actually leaving the body. We have a trifecta going on. So there's different reasons, and we don't need a medication for that. We just will walk through and change a couple of little things that they feel comfortable doing that is best for them, for their family, for their lifestyle. And guess what? Now we have made an easy, sustainable change, and they know why they feel the way that they do. And it's having that empowerment of knowing what's going on in your body and not giving that power to a doctor or a medication. That's ownership of yourself, and you can't take that away from anyone.
No, I could just see people's shoulders going, oh, that's real. Like that can be part of my journey. The lab work. So, first and foremost, we need to be heard or feel like we're being heard. Second,
Yes.
with paired with a practitioner that has the ability to help us investigate our lab work. Are you finding that a lot of that lab work is covered by insurance or most of it's out of pocket?
So everything I do is out of pocket. Now I can, use super bills and use HSA and FSA that will cover a lot of those types of things, but it is not tried and true, just traditional lab work that you go into your doctor's office and say, hey, I need to look at my thyroid levels. Because a lot of times doctors hear the word thyroid and they'll say, okay, we'll just test for TSH. Well, TSH is the signal from your pituitary gland to your thyroid gland that it needs to release more or less hormone. We're not even looking at the hormone there. It's just the signal. And so a lot of times women can feel really bad, crappy, and they'll say, well, my thyroid level was normal. No, they didn't even test it. It's so important to say, I need all of my thyroid labs run, because we're not even looking at T4. There's different types. You have a total T4, which looks at all of that thyroid hormone. And T4 is what the body makes the most of. That hormone is the most abundant. But T3, there's a total in there as well. But T3 is the one that really ignites and turns on and activates. So we have an abundant one and an activating one. And we want to look at the free versions of those. Even knowing the total versions of those, that just lets us know how much is going on in the body. But which one is available to turn on and say, hey, we need to boost the metabolism. We need to help control our temperature. We need to let things go through the GI tract faster. All of that's controlled by the thyroid. And so making sure that we are looking at the right labs is going to be very, very important to do as well. And a lot of women don't know to ask. They go to their provider and they're like, well, that we looked at the thyroid and it was normal.
Right. No, thank you for diving into thyroid, because I also want to point out, and I know you have this conversation with your clients, like there is normal and there's optimal. And what
Yes.
you're saying is that, patients get handed that lab slip and they go, yep, everything's normal. But then you're taking that lab and going, hang on. First of all, are we even grabbing the right lab? And even if we are, is it suboptimal? Is it not going to get you
what is
so.
normal for your cousin is not normal for you. And so you have to go for what's optimal. And a lot of women that I work with, even if they have, let's say, a TSH of 2.5, which is in the medical field normal, they can still feel so tired, can't get out of bed. They're bloated, feeling and swelling for unknown reasons. And the doctor's just like, I don't know what's going on. You need an antidepressant, most likely.
I feel like we're going crazy, like I feel horrible and my labs are normal. What? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And so a lot of the labs that I do aren't as traditional. We do a little bit more of a different type of lab work. It's some things you can, I'll send to actual phlebotomists, but a lot of these kinds of things we're able to do in the comfort of your own home. And so it just looks at not only the actual labs, but the pathways of those, because even if you have a normal estrogen, what happens if you're not methylizing, which is a process to kind of turn on the estrogen to allow your body to use it? Well, you have to have B12 and B6 to be able to do that. And half the population's walking around with a methylation issue anyway. And so knowing that, just being like, well, my estrogen levels are good, but I still don't feel good. Well, are we making the right things to turn on and acknowledge that estrogen to begin with? So I do a ton of digging, and that's where the functional and integrative providers really benefit from, because they work at getting to a root cause. We don't really use a pill for a ill type of practice. It is digging and digging, because guess what? If our thyroid function is sluggish, we're going to be more constipated. Our hair and nails aren't growing. Our metabolism's slower. We're going to feel more down and out. But once we kind of help support that, we know we're going to need more selenium. We need more foods with magnesium. We've got to be mindful of our iodine content. We need lots of good proteins and fiber to help with the GI system. So there's nutrients and different amounts of foods that they need different than just what a regular female might need.
Right. So sometimes just extra supplementing once you know what you need to be looking for is what you're saying.
Absolutely. Supplements, but also, like you can eat 4 Brazil nuts. Those are like, if you get a mixed nut bag, those are the ones I always tell people that look like a thumb. 4 Brazil nuts give you your DRI, your daily requirement for selenium right then and there. So it's knowing things like that. And that's where I love that term, food is medicine. Food really can be medicine and healing, and utilizing the right nutrients that are going to best work for you to optimize and turn on and ignite the things that need to be ignited.
Oh, yes. So good. So let me ask you this while we're still talking thyroid a little bit. I
Yeah.
feel like thyroid always gets brought up with menopause for some reason. Do you see links of like needing to speak over all of that at the same time, or is it separated, but you need to decipher like, is something going on with the thyroid or is it more menopausal?
They all overlap. And so when you think about thyroid and your reproductive hormones, your estrogen, your progesterone, your testosterone, we even have to include our cortisol levels, which is our stress hormone. They all interlap and change. And there's something that's called cortisol steal. So a lot of women, just because of what we were born into, not because of something, we just have a lot of roles and we wear a lot of hats. We have additional stress. We, create the households and the families and all of those types of things. And then workload. And we just carry a lot of stress load. So our bodies were not designed to have a ton of stress. Even the stress of like a project needs to go out by the end of this day is stressful, but also the thought process of putting on a pair of pants and they don't fit the way that they used to. That thought of, I can't believe I've let myself get here. That's the same stressor as a car accident. So women get hit with so much stress more and more each and every day because of, one, how hard we are, but the mental stress load that we carry. And so when that happens, we need cortisol constantly being released because we're fighting off stress constantly. And over time, the body can't keep up with that demand. So there's something called cortisol steal, and it will steal from other hormones. And one of the top hormones that it steals from are thyroid, and then your progesterone levels, and your DHEA, which is connected to your testosterone. And so a lot of women, when they're going through perimenopause, menopause, there's fluctuations with that estrogen progesterone ratio, which normally is around a 10 to 1 estrogen to progesterone. So now we have lower progesterone, and we have what feels like higher estrogen levels. So we have times of estrogen dominance. Our boobs are more sore. We're more moody. We're carrying more weight in our hips, thighs, and abdominal area. And it's just the shift. And then all of a sudden, as those things, then that estrogen level is going to drop, but our progesterone levels are low. So things are just it's something that we constantly have to look and see where we are in that journey. But definitely looking into the thyroid and the reproductive hormone connection, because if those things are both depleted, then we need to say, hold on, what's causing this depletion in both of these areas?
Beautiful answer. Thank you. And paints such a clear picture. And I've never heard of cortisone steal before, and that makes so much sense.
Yes, cortisol steal, it's real, and it's out there. But like I said, women, I know males have stress, and I know that I don't want to say that males don't go through that, but my focus is women, and we go through so much more.
That's what I was just going to say. But we're talking to women right now. So
Exactly.
here's the main thing is it's real. Your stress is real, and it's causing real havoc within your insides. And I think it's just one of those things that women can go, yeah, I got to get my stress under control, but not understanding all of those links that are happening internally because of that stress. So it's forever interesting. I thank you also for hand-holding us through all of this, because it goes back to that overwhelm feeling. The way that you're able to talk about this, it's like if we get in front of the right practitioner, then we can be handheld. And that's what you're doing for your clients. Do you notice your clients doing this, and maybe you can give us a specific example where they are like completely hopeless and all of a sudden they see the light, they see this path.
True. It is true. And well, a lot of them will come to me and they're just, they've tried everything. They've tried different diets and different workouts and worked with other providers or tried different meal plans. And I know through your podcast, you go into that toxic relationship with the nutrition and wellness world and the money making aspect of it. And really honing in on what's best for each person. But you want to let them feel comforted and know, like, it's not in your head. Something is going on, and your realization that you just feel off, I'm going to listen to, and I trust you 100%. I'm on that side, and we're going to figure out what that is that's causing you to feel that way. And so I worked with this lady. She was a hoot. She was like, I am all over the board, ups and downs. I cry. I've worked out all of my life, eaten really healthy. I just constantly gain periods and stuff, or not sleeping, the same kind of telltale signs. And she was like, but if I do this, what happens when my labs, everything comes back and everything is normal? And I was like, in all of my years, it has never happened. Something is causing this. And we do such digging with those lab values that something's going to be off. And that's what she was like, I feel so validated that things are, like, it's not in my head, because I was so worried, like, what if I was restricting too much, or if I'm causing this, or what if it is that I just need to take a medicine because I'm down and out. And after we kind of supported things and like that, her husband within a week was just like, I notice a huge difference in you.
Oh,
I feel like I'm getting my wife back. She's like, oh, I feel like I'm getting myself back. That's why we do what we do.
Oh, I have chills. And thank you for validating this whole, like, there is a scare, and I don't care if it's within why we feel like we're being almost crazy at the moment, or cholesterol, the scare of seeing something we don't want to see. But then this was interesting to hear you just say this, seeing something that, like, what if everything's good? And I still am on this other side of feeling out of whack. That's scary too.
It's true. It's true. If you are one that's been told your cholesterol is high, you feel like you're always on the cold tendency, there's reasons behind that. Cholesterol is something that's made closely with our hormones. It is a hormone as well. And so there's reasons why if cholesterol is not being where it needs to be. And I can go on that a tangent as well, because optimal cholesterol levels, we need them to be a little bit higher, because we need that cholesterol to make hormones. If our cholesterol is 200, then most likely we're not able to make the hormones the way that we're supposed to later in life. So we have to kind of remember that just because years ago we were told something, it might not be the case anymore. And that's why we want providers to stay up to date with this knowledge and information, because, used to, eggs would get a bad rap. You couldn't eat eggs, and then, oh, you can't eat eggs, just the whites. Well, no, never mind. Now you can have an egg, and it just goes back and forth. And so you really want to stay up to date. And I can say safely now that we need eggs, like people need to eat eggs.
Yes. No, I hear you. And again, what you're saying is why people get so overwhelmed in the nutrition world, is because practitioners can barely stay up on it, let alone the person who's not as interested in it. So, and that's where coaching is such a beautiful thing, to be able to sit in front of you, Meg, and just know that somebody's going to handhold through their journey, and just, you don't have to worry. Somebody else will take that for you. Do you work virtually, or do you just have people come into your office?
I work virtually. Everything is virtually, and we still get that connection closely. It's not like a one-time session. We work together over months at a time, because we're finding out different information and, workouts and things like that. When is the optimal time for them to work out? What type of workouts? Those all come into play. How to help improve sleep. A lot of the women I work with don't sleep well. And stress management. I'm a yoga teacher, but I don't really go and teach classes, but I use the breath work in different positions to help women for stress management, because just doing breath work can help decrease that cortisol level, and certain positions can help ease into, sleep or rest. We just stay in that sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight, flight, or freeze mode. And when you think about that, like if a bear walks out of the woods, we need to be able to exert energy to get out of that situation. So we have a lot of energy that goes to our hands and feet during that time. And blood gets pulled literally from the internal organs to go to those areas. So guess what? Our GI tract doesn't even have the correct blood flow when we stay in that stressed out mode. So doing things like that helps us shift into what's called parasympathetic nervous system, where it's the rest and digest mode. So women sometimes don't even get the benefit of eating their healthy foods or doing these, diets that they do because their stress levels and their hormone levels aren't even able to support the proper digestion of those types of things.
That's so interesting. Yes, you took that another level. I feel like we continue hearing a lot about the rest and digest, but to think you just added a new level of why we should care. And
Yes.
even that something like yoga, it can be an answer. Yes,
Or
that's so
walking, just
interesting.
simple walking or just standing outside in nature or, just breathing outside. Sometimes I will talk people into, and they're just like, I'm not ready for a exercise regimen. And I don't go into all of those details. That's why we have professionals like you that get to go into those types of details. But just getting up and standing barefoot in the grass allows that cortisol to say, hey, we're getting ignited for the day, but we're still staying in that calm mode. So there's certain actions that we can do that they feel comfortable doing. And it's little things like that make a difference. I know that you probably preach this too, but small achievable things that they feel comfortable doing add up to big wins and changes.
Yeah. Oh, I just had somebody say this in a previous interview. The little things are the big things. Like if we could all truly believe that, we'd be so much further. And that
Yes,
we all stop digging before we hit gold, like that we can be doing those small things, but not see this success pattern that's happening. And so we stop, but we were so close to hitting gold.
it's true. I worked with this lady and she was a hoot. She contacted me and she's like, listen, I'm coming to you very pessimistically. I have done all of the things. She was a cheerleader in grade school, high school, college, professional. She trained cheers. So she's like, I have manipulated and, tweaked my body to meet, weight goals and all of this thing all of my life. And she goes, lo and behold, I can't do that anymore. The things that I've tried and done that have worked in the past aren't working anymore. And I feel poop. My focus is gone. I don't have the get up and go. And she goes, and I am not one that's going to be in the kitchen all day long, cooking every single meal. I have this job that I'm really running. And so we had to really work within her. And so we literally started by making sure she was hitting certain hydration goals on days and making sure she was getting enough protein within certain meals. And within 2 weeks, she contacted and she goes, okay, full believer, just knowing that I can focus on those two things and you're not going to overwhelm me with, like hundreds of goals that I have to work on. I'm waking up with joy and I haven't done that in years. I have energy that's sustaining me all day long. I have energy to go work out and do the things that I love to do. My scale is shifting and that hasn't happened in a while, but that wasn't the main focus. And I hear that a lot with the women. Like, I feel so bad that I know that weight is something I need to address, but right now I need to focus on just feeling good. And it is just small little changes are big.
And don't you feel that once the mental shift goes away from scale and on to feeling better, then the journey kind of becomes even more real and sustainable?
Yes, absolutely. I am one, I don't require, weigh-ins or to know what the weight changes are. If I have someone that's what their main focus is, then we definitely can kind of play around with that as well. But weight is just one thing that we can go by. But if your hair's falling out, you're not sleeping, if you have no libido, if your skin is super wrinkly, dry, you have eczema, acne, all of these things, those are things that we really can see differences in immediately and daily and things like that. And those are also just as, if not as important as just what the shift of fluid that you get to see on a daily basis in the scale.
I love that you just said that shift of fluid. Yes. You did not just gain 2 pounds overnight, I promise.
Yes. And it wasn't because that you had a piece of cheese. You know what I mean? It's like they think of that one food that has caused that scale to have such a big.
Oh, for sure. And we've all done it, right? Like, and I think that's another cool space within here is you're never alone. Everyone's all done the same thing, tried, and then to your point of things stop working at a certain age for us. What used to work, our little tricks and trades don't anymore. So part of our job is to bring peace in this journey, and that piece of cheese didn't make you gain a pound, or that cookie didn't do that. There's more to this story. Just like you said, with somebody who's feeling awful, who's fearful that their lab work's going to come back normal, you're like, I can promise you with the labs we're taking, that really never happens. Can you say the same thing about if somebody's like, I've never, or not never, but I can't sleep well right now? Like, would you say there's hopeless causes, or do you feel like there's always something that you can do to help their sleep?
There is always something. And a lot of time, whenever we are not sleeping well, it can be from hormonal shifts. Definitely. It can be from stress that's going on. But also we have to look into like blood sugar. Sometimes a lot of women's blood sugars will drop because we're not eating enough during the day. And that's that diet mentality that we were thrown into. And so making sure that we're getting enough. And a lot of times I hear, working with women, did not know that I could eat so much food. And it's not like they're eating tons of food. It's just that they have freedom with food, and that they're eating real things, and they can still go through, a restaurant or pick up something and know that they're still fueling their body and that helps them to sleep. Our hunger hormones get regulated between those hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. So if we're staying up and Netflixing or scrolling to see what's on Instagram, or if we sleep with that phone even close by, those lights still dysregulate what's going on internally, even with our eyes closed. And so those hunger hormones don't get the knowledge to say, hey, we are recalibrating and resetting. And so we wake up more hungry. We wake up more tired. The liver didn't get to do all of its cleanup, work at nighttime. And so we are waking up more sluggish every single day. And it's a cyclic effect. I read some stunning tidbit that said, for every hour of sleep deprivation that we have as women, we need 4 days of rest to make up that difference. So you think about women that have had, that have babies and children, and those years that we had of sleeping with monitors and getting up for feeds, we are depleted decade. I feel like of sleep
until we die.
Yes, exactly. And so sleep and rest play such a role with health. And I think sleep should be talked about as much as a protein or as a carbohydrate, or as how much fluid that we're getting. It's just as important on the table.
I agree. So pillars, just to keep summarizing as we go here: sleep, stress, fluid, nutrition. So protein, though, you keep pulling protein out of that. You want to dig more on that for a second, and just why do you keep throwing protein on the table?
A lot of women, if a woman goes into a doctor's office, most of the time, and I hear this frequently, and I've had this talk myself, that they go in and they're like, something's not right. I feel like I'm kind of gaining. Well, you need to watch your calories. You need to cut back on your sugar, carbohydrates. And if a gal goes in, they're going to get talked to about what they need to do to build up muscle, protein. They'll even probably have a testosterone talk. Women need that conversation as well, and not the conversation that we're getting. And so we don't get enough protein. And a lot of times, like when I tell women, they're like, well, how much protein should I be getting in a day? Should I be getting like 50 grams? It's like, you should be getting 50 grams probably just in your breakfast. And they're just like, oh my gosh, what?
Do you think we're way under on protein?
Way under on protein. Way under on protein. Protein not only helps with blood sugar stabilization and control, but it helps with building up our enzymes. Our enzymes in our body are little machines that do all of the functions. They're the little workers, kind of like if that are doing all of the things, turning on what needs to be turned on and turning off what needs to be turned off. And so they help with our hormone functions as well. And so if we don't have enough protein to make enzymes, then our functions aren't happening the way that they're supposed to. And so that protein is just so important. We think of protein as building up muscle, which is, of course, important as well. But we need protein for those other factors, and we just don't get talked to about that.
Right. Let's have a fun dietitian talk for a second about, let's go through, like, to somebody, they would be like, how many grams of protein, at breakfast? How do I even get that? Go through a quick day example of just some like normal foods you see clients eating where they can really hit good protein levels.
Yeah. And so one of the easiest ways to do, protein, of course, if you're able to eat eggs, throw in an egg, but everyone's like, oh, okay, can I do one egg? It's like, you can do three, like it's okay. Get those eggs in. If you don't like scrambled eggs, an omelet or a hard boiled eggs, I love a hard boiled egg. I consume those all of the time. But even a smoothie, you can pack in a lot of protein through a smoothie using a protein supplement that works best for adding in some nut butters, chia seeds, flax seeds, those types of things that give those proteins that we just don't think about. Adding in dairy, if dairy is tolerated for you, is another great source. And then having even some eggs on the side or some ham or turkey or something along those lines. Breakfast, starting out your day doesn't mean it has to be a breakfast food. We've created what a breakfast food is, but our body doesn't care. You can have a salmon quinoa bowl in the morning time to ignite that protein and help meet that goal. And it's fine. We just need to get those protein sources in, and snacking on protein. Nuts and seeds are great to snack on. We don't want to, that's why people have these crashes. If you just eat a chip, that blood sugar is going to spike and drop, but the protein is what goes in and helps kind of plateau and stabilize those types of things. So, and if you're like, I can't get 50 grams of protein, and not all people need 50 grams of protein, but getting into that 20 to 30 gram range is a really good start. And so, getting a few ounces of protein is going to get you close to that realm.
Right. Yes. We probably should clarify that. We are not giving a specific gram.
Yes,
everybody's needs are different.
50 grams.
Yeah, but we could say for the average person, like to hit even close to 60, is good. And then most of us need a lot more than that. An activity level gets thrown in there. So that's definitely a private conversation with your practitioner. But thank you. Your examples are great. And I will say that most of us don't do that. To your point, like that would be a phenomenal conversation to walk into a doctor's office and get to have.
Yes, well, most women, what they do is they fuel for coffee. They grab their coffee, they'll grab a protein bar, which most of the time, if you look at those protein bars, they might have 7 grams of protein. Some, I will say, can have 20 grams of protein. But a lot of times we're skipping breakfast, or we might just nibble off what our kids have, or just skipped altogether. And we just are fueling off of coffee. Well, that just sets us up for having this faux energy that's going in and fueling us, because the body then hears like, hey, we're not really igniting or turning on because we haven't had that fuel from food, but we're doing great because we're burning off that energy source that's coming from caffeine. So the body gets told, hey, we don't really need to have that boost. So our metabolism's just going to stay where it is. So we don't really, it's tricking the body into thinking that it's all right for us to have that slower metabolism, when we want to be like, no. We need to turn everything on and get things moving. And so, not saying that coffee is completely bad, but if we have coffee going in, we need food sources to go in with that.
Yes, that's so true. And so doesn't happen, especially with the whole fasting craze, that a lot of people are like, I'll fast till noon and I'll just sip coffee or tea and call it a morning. So
yeah. And I do believe that there's times and places for fasting, and 100% of us fast every single night. When we go to sleep after the last bite of food, we sleep, and then we break our fast whenever we have our breakfast or whenever we do eat. So some people might fast for 8 hours or 12 hours, and it's different for each person. But when there is a hormonal imbalance going on, especially with stress levels, cortisol gets drived higher when we fast. So you really have to be cautious with fasting and making sure that those hormone levels are where they need to be.
I've never heard it like pinpointed so wonderfully. So it again all boils around hormones and watching out for our cortisol levels, and where we are in our season of life, right? That we can't, again, just tell everybody to do one thing because it'll work. We have to be individualized. You had mentioned you talk glucose a lot. I'm just curious, just since I have you on here, how do you feel? I feel like the continuous blood glucose monitors are kind of the new craze. How do you feel about those?
I love those. And I don't think that everyone needs to wear them. I myself wore one just out of curiosity and just to see what was going on with me. Just for, I'm the nerd that likes that data, that has that information.
Research.
Exactly. And I want to know how it feels. So if I put someone on that to be able, it will have, you have a little burn or you have a little sting, but it's nothing like a bee or anything like that. But there's a time and place. So many people are walking around insulin resistant nowadays. And so it is something that we have to discuss and talk about. But the need for a continuous glucose monitor is not always the case for every single person. But talking about blood sugar control, I do think is something that everybody can benefit from, just because we have that SAD diet, which is standard American diet, lots of processed foods, lots of sugars that get added into our foods that drive our blood sugars to be a little bit higher, which cause us to have more of an insulin demand. And so whenever we have food consumption, we do have those blood sugar particles just floating around in our blood, and they want to go in and feed that cell. But you have to have insulin as the key holder. It's the one that opens the key to allow then that sugar to go in and feed it. But over time, because we have foods that have all this extra sugar, or for unknown reasons, maybe that insulin, when it binds, it doesn't do the unlocking very well anymore. But for some reason, that insulin just doesn't get the signal out the way that it needs to. And so we have to talk about that, because so many people are affected by that. And it is just because of what we have around us to consume.
Yes. Okay. And if somebody is not willing to pay to go on this continuous blood glucose monitor, do you also recommend within your lab work the hemoglobin A1C lab to get that view? Yes.
But I also love fasting insulins. I love fasting insulins for my patients just to see where they are on insulin resistance, because sometimes you can have a hemoglobin A1C that comes back as a 5.2. Well, guess what? They could have such high blood sugars and then such low blood sugars that in that 3-month time frame, which is that they balance out to be great blood sugars. So we want to know if it's, a surge in insulin, or if they have enough insulin to help support. So doing a little bit more digging and getting a little bit more, more concrete with what you're looking for is important. So hemoglobin A1C is great and a wonderful start, but I just take it that next step and look into, that fasting insulin, what else is kind of going on.
Wonderful. Thank you for that term. And again, we will summarize this in the show notes, or listeners, come back and hit rewind and bring your notepad and write down your questions. Maybe Meg and I need to do a question answer session together, but I would be remiss if I don't take this one last layering here. And man, I could talk to you for forever, but the whole idea of our microbiome, and I think that a lot of women start to get caught up in, and we should pay attention to it, but I'm curious on how much attention gets paid to gut health, and when you start to really investigate more food sensitivities or gut health versus like hormonal, or does it all get looked at?
It can overlap, and some of those symptoms look exactly the same. So you do have to do some digging and things. And I will say that after everything that happened with COVID, gut health, thinking in that shift of gut health was one of the positive thing that kind of came about, because people were starting to notice, like, hey, if that microbiome or gut health, that integrity is going on in the gut, that affects how strong of a reaction that you can have. So it came a little bit on the forefront, and people have always kind of heard the words probiotic before. That's something that probably people have heard, might not know what it is. But it is, looking into our GI tract, which starts here, and goes all the way through until things are excreted out of the body. But we have different trillions and trillions of bacteria, yeast, and different microorganisms that are utilized to break down things and release different gases. And that's just how we work. And so when we don't have enough of good bacteria, or we don't have the right types of bacteria in there, then those jobs aren't getting done. And the gut integrity then is not as strong. We're not able to absorb and break down the foods that we're consuming. So you could be the healthiest eater of all people, but if that gut microbiome, then we're not absorbing all of those foods. And some of our good mood neurotransmitters are made in the gut, like our serotonin. So we can feel down and out sometimes, and that can stem from the gut. Now research is starting to show that connection with, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's as being like type 3 diabetes, that blood sugar control, but it started from that gut. Health is a big piece of that too. So there's just more and more research coming out that gut health is so important. And so working with someone to, one, determine if we do have good gut health is important. And a lot of times if we don't have good gut health, it can be from, of course, stress is one of those things. Alcohol consumption, things that kind of tear down that gut lining, more soda intake or chemical types of products, whether we eat them or consume them or breathe them in, they can still cause reactions to that. Or sometimes regular foods that we actually don't know that we're sensitive to can be a culprit. So for somebody that eats maybe garlic, normally we would think garlic is a great food and it helps and it gives you all of these benefits. But for some people that could be a culprit of a food sensitivity. And so when they consume garlic, it actually causes issues of bloat and discomfort, and your body doesn't break it down. So things start to ferment in there. And we want to know what foods work well for you and what foods don't. So when that happens, it actually causes an inflammatory response. And anytime we hear the word inflammation, that's just another coded word for stress. So guess what happens? Those stress hormones get involved and it will steal from those other areas. So it's all tied in together.
That is incredible. And first steps, let's go there again. As far as if somebody's going, I've always worried about this a little bit, what would be a nice first jump off step for them?
Yeah, well, first of all, if you have any issues with reflux or typical GI symptoms, reflux, bloat, not going to the bathroom regularly, too much, stooling too much or having diarrhea, those are definitely key pieces. But if you eat certain foods and you notice like, man, it just doesn't set well with me, or I can't eat a lot of this certain food. Those are all clued in words that there's probably some food sensitivities going on. And sensitivity is different than an allergy. Sometimes people can go and have these allergy tests, food allergy tests, and it doesn't come back. It's normal. Everything's normal. But when you consume ice cream, you feel yucky and have this heaviness. And so you can have a sensitivity to a food and not have a true allergy to a food. And just working, and once you remove those types of foods out, then that inflammatory process decreases, the inflammation decreases, your gut is able to function the way that it's supposed to. So little things like that help make a difference for absorption and feeling good.
Right. So in this again, if a client came to you, and I'm saying this out loud for our listeners, I always picture it as like all these things floating around up here. I feel this way. I'm bloated this way. My mood's this way. You help bring them all down onto paper, and we'll start here and we'll investigate here. And then if we need to investigate further, like you can just peel back onion layer by onion layer until you can really get to that. Again, you mentioned this, but I love this term, root cause, the reason why we are experiencing what we're experiencing, and not putting band-aids on. We'll get so much further if we root cause everything versus band-aids. So that's my biggest recommendation. If somebody needs to like take a first step today, it is just, just investigating, I saw on your website, you do a investigative call. I forget the exact terms that you have.
I tell people just to schedule a call. We'll talk around 30 minutes. And one, just so I can learn, what's been going on with them health-wise, but also what are they wanting to achieve? And that way you can give them those tips and tricks right off the bat to kind of help. If they're thinking thyroid is going on, then, hey, let's start eating some Brazil nuts right off the bat to help give that selenium for that thyroid. Or if they're experiencing lots of reflux and they don't want to take a medication, it's like, let's first make sure that we're chewing our food, our enzymes having enough time to break down our foods, little things like that to kind of help. And then they can hear how I work, because, you want to prioritize shopping around for a provider. Some people might not like the way that I do things, and that's fine. There's lots, as I said, lots of fish out there in the sea for you to find that good fit for you. Once you find that connection and you work to say, okay, this is what I think would be great. Mention these things. This is what's going to start to help that. What's your comfort level on that? How do you feel? Is that a good space for you to start to engage? Does that feel livable? Because that's a big thing that we have to talk about too. Because I can say, you need to eat these things, you have to eat this amount of protein, and we'll follow back up next week. Well, if they have sick kids or they have travels that they're having to do, that's not livable. So you have to take into those types of things. But yeah, you building that connection and knowing where their comfort levels are, and just getting in those first steps is great. And that's why I like to do those calls, is just to get that ball rolling, to see if we're going to let the ball continue to roll, or just get just those initial tips and tricks and say, hey, this is where my comfort level was for right now, and I'll circle back whenever I'm ready.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And I just don't feel like people utilize those free calls frequently enough, because that's the number one thing I hear is I don't know where to start. And I think there's this fear, well, if I call, then I'm committing. You're not committing. You're just getting that next actionable step, that next piece that you can sit on for a while, and that's okay. But, and just knowing, like you and I already talked, you're connected to other physicians. I know there's all this referring that can go on once you're connected somewhere, but you need to be connected for your name, your issues to be like, oh, this person would be perfect for you. For any listener who's going, I am loving Meg, give us the best places to find you. And then I have one more question for you.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so you can find me on social media, of course. Everything's kind of streamlined. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, but it's Meg Green RD. And then I have that website, meggreenrd.com. You can click the button for your free call, or you can email me at meg@meggreenrd.com and say, hey, I heard you, let's get that free call going, or I just want to, pick your brain. All of those types of things. I'd love to hop on and just, take the conversation a little bit further.
I love this. And one last thing, I ask all my guests this, if our listeners heard nothing else out of today, what would you want to wrap your arms around them and just be like, hear this out of me?
I would say, and this is what I tell people all of the time, that your feelings and your symptoms and what you are experiencing is true, and you are validated to know that it's okay to dig deeper and continue to ask, even if you're told that it's normal. Most likely there's something going on that's not normal. And it is okay that you're feeling this way, because something's off. Your body is telling you you need to keep looking and finding to get the support that's needed.
Telling you, shouting at you.
It's screaming. Hence why we have those symptoms going on.
Yes. You are such a delight, such a gem. And I'm so excited we connected. Thank you.
I know. This is so fun. So fun.
Have a great rest of your day, and we're pulling you back on at some point.
Yep.